to a very special episode of What Are You Reading? What Are You Writing? We're going to do things a little differently today. I'm Carren E. Osborne, author of Getting It Right and upcoming Tangled Lies, July 22nd. It's coming out. And one of the things, so about 3 months, we've been doing this blog. I understand that's what's called, a video blog, a vlog. And we've been doing this, and I have met so many wonderful authors. And one of the things that I've learned is what a supportive community, I mean, really supportive community that writers are. And readers are wonderful, sharing people. So one of those lovely people that I met, and I hope you saw her video already, is Mary Ellen Bramwell. And Mary Ellen is the author of In Search of Sisters, which came out in April and is available. Go get it. You can find it on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and wherever you buy your books. So Mary Ellen contacted me and she said, I would love to interview you. So I said, well, okay. So that's what we're going to do. Hey, Mary Ellen.
Hello. It's so good to see you today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good.
So the show is yours.
Awesome. I am so thrilled. So my host and my guest today is Carren E. Osborne, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And like she said, she recently interviewed me. And I had so much fun with that I just thought it would be fun to turn the tables and have a chance to interview her and learn a little bit more about her author journey and her books and the things that she's doing. So I'm so excited to hear about your new book coming out. But before we do that, let's follow this format of what you've been reading and also learning a little bit about yourself. So welcome, Carren.
Thank you.
And I'm interested to learn about your writing and your latest book. But first, tell me about two books you've read recently and loved.
Yes. So again, this sharing community, Jenny Jaeckel, who is a fellow author and incredibly generous woman, heard that I was working on a memoir of my grandmother, and it takes place in the 1920s. And she recommended this book from a research point of view. So you can see it.
Yes.
So it's called Wayward Lives, Beautiful Experiments, Intimate Histories of Riotous Black Girls, Troublesome Women, and Queer Radicals by Saidiya. I'm quite sure how she pronounces her first name, Hartman.
Huh, interesting.
It is, so she sent it to me from a research perspective, that there are things in there that you might find of interest because it takes a lot of the locations or places that you're writing about. But it is so beautiful. It is this woman writes, so she's writing nonfiction, but it reads like fiction. And just really, I love sentences. One of the things that I wish I was better at is writing gorgeous, gorgeous sentences. And she writes gorgeous sentences that just make you pause, because it's just so evocative. And so anyway, it's a beautiful book. And then another book that was recommended by a fellow writer, her name is Barbara Joyce Hawryluk. She's also interviewed. So Jenny is part of this series, and so is Barbara, part of this series. And she, totally different kind of book. She recommended Blacktop Wasteland. And Blacktop Wasteland is written by S.A. Cosby. And it is a page turner, and it's written from a man's point of view, which I don't always love. I like books written, from women. But this book is so gripping because it is character driven. So even though the plot is just can't wait to see what's going to happen next. The characters are so well drawn, and the main character is a very flawed but good man, and
Mm-hmm.
he's trying to take his family out of poverty, and he's trying to um, be a good husband and a good father, and he's trying to line up his past with what he wants for the future, and really and it's going to be made into a movie, I found out.
Interesting. So this
Yeah.
is fiction. So you've recommended a nonfiction and a fiction.
And a fiction. Yes. Yes, yes,
Awesome.
yes, yes. And if I may, Madam Host,
Yes. Do you have other books you could recommend to us?
I spend so much time reading children's books because I had 3 grandsons. And so,
How old?
so
How
the
old are they?
baby is 2,
Mm-hmm.
middle one is going to be 10 next month, and the
Mm,
oldest is 14, and he'll be 15 in a couple of months. And so the 2 of them, we share book titles and talk about books we like, and we discuss them on FaceTime and different ways. And the baby, I just keep sending him books, and when we're on, I hold it up and try to read it to him and get his mom to read to him. So middle grandson, Aiden, who's going to be 10, I sent him Jason Lady. Jason Lady is a fellow Black Rose writing author,
awesome.
and
Mm-hmm.
he writes middle grade books. And I sent Aiden the first one. It's called Monster Problems.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked him, what did he think? Now, this is a kid who reads 4 or 5 books a week. And he
Okay.
said, Grammy, it was the best book I have ever read. And I said, the best book that you've ever read? He said, yeah. I said, what did you like about it? He said, the action is you're right there. You can see everything. The dialogue is excellent. And even the inner dialogue is really strong. This is from a 9-year-old.
It sounds like you've been talking to him a little bit about books and writing and what these terms might be. That's delightful.
Isn't that cool? So, and I also have on my YouTube channel, Jason Lady is one of the people that I've interviewed. And then the last children's book I sent Aiden was by Carren, Carren, Strock, Strock. And Carren wrote a book about, I'm sorry, now I'm just blanking on the name of it for half a second. And I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget it. Secret Survivors. And
Okay.
it is a really wonderful about this family, these kids that are stuck in a terrible snowstorm, and how they survive and how they have to take care of each other. And
Huh.
yeah, and Carren is an award-winning author of fiction, nonfiction, art. She's just incredible. So those are my recommendations.
That is fantastic. I love that you found a way to connect with your grandchildren through books.
Yes.
Such a delightful way to connect.
It
So
really
wonderful.
is. It's a gift.
It is. It is. To both of you.
Yes.
So that brings us to what started you on your writing journey. How did you start becoming an author?
Well, my father was a great believer in reading. And every Christmas, he would buy me books for Christmas. In between, I would go to the library, so we didn't have enough money for me to own a library of books. I had to go to the library, and I'd, borrow 7 books. You were allowed 7 books a week. And so I would borrow 7 books. I'd read them all. I'd take it back to the library. But every Christmas, I got to own a few books. And that started a tradition. That's how I raised my children as well. And that just kind of led to, I want to be able to do that. I want to be able to write. And so I'd create these stories in my head, and I would tell the kids on the block but if I told them it was a story I made up, they wouldn't listen. So I told them that it was an adventure that I personally had. Of course, I was lying. And I always would get caught, because then they'd go ask my brother, did Carren really have this adventure? And my older brother would just throw me under the bus. No, she didn't do that. So that got me in a lot of trouble, but I kept doing it because I loved, and they would stay wrapped. They would listen to like the whole thing, and then this happened and that happened. And then as I got older, I wrote more short stories and bad poetry. But it was only until about 15 years ago that I decided to really try writing a full-length novel. And that's been my life since then. I mean, many other things, but the thing that gives me the most passion, the thing that gives me the most joy is writing.
How daunting was it to shift from short story to full-length novel?
That's such a good question, Mary Ellen, because I remember reading, or I took a writing course with Gotham writers.
Yes.
And the instructor, fellow writer, said that you've got to have at least a minimum of 60,000 words, and that it's better if you have 70 or 80,000 words. So I hit like 30,000 words, and I thought, I don't have another 30,000 words. What am I going to do with this story? How do I possibly make it keep going? That middle, that place that you hit the middle. But my characters kept talking to me in my head. Kara and Alex, and this was the first novel, Getting It Right. And Kara and Alex would talk to me. And so I thought, well, okay, if they're still willing to go, I'm still willing to go. And so I moved forward. But it was daunting in the beginning to go from short stories to 70,000 words, 400 pages, 300 pages. Did you find it daunting?
I did. I was so anxious for the punch at the end. And so I finally gave up, and I wrote the ending chapters because they were so alive in my head, and I was so anxious to get there that I was cutting out all of the story just so I could get there. So I finally just wrote the final chapters to put my mind at ease and quiet those characters, because they're real. When you're a fiction author, those people are real. I'm sorry to say. And it took some doing and a lot of patience on my part to persevere and write the story as it needed to be written, rather than shortchange it. Shortchange it.
And give those characters their full due.
Their due. Exactly.
Yes.
That's great. Well, now tell us about your upcoming book. I'm excited about this, and you've got to be really excited about this.
I am really excited about this. I want to read one of my early reviews. You have early beta readers, and so this one was A.J. McCarthy. A.J. is
she's a fantastic author.
Isn't she an amazing writer?
She is.
And she writes, her settings are in Canada, and she writes wonderful mysteries, and she's so generous. She's generous with her time. She's generous. So anyway, she wrote this lovely review for me that I'm going to read. Tangled Lies is a deftly written combination of suspense and women's fiction. The author, that's me, intricately weaves the story of two women. So one woman is Vera. Vera is a 70-year-old African-American woman, and she's a widow. And Danny is 25 years old, and she's white, and she's pretty much homeless. Two women from very different backgrounds and cultures who join forces to right a wrong and find a murderer.
Ooh,
I was
I love that.
Isn't that great? She says, I was immediately drawn into the lives of Osborne's well-developed characters and was intrigued by their emotional connections and the fast-paced plot.
Wow.
Ev-
Don't you love it when somebody else says all of the things that you would love to say about your own book, but they say it and it's just beautiful. That
Yes,
is so exciting.
and she's such a good writer. She even writes great reviews. She's, she writes really lovely reviews. So it was a departure for me because
Okay.
uh, so this is my third novel. It's just that my second one wasn't published yet.
Gotcha.
So novel 1 and 2, my characters took me on a journey. I wasn't always sure where I was going, but they took me there. But with a murder mystery, can't do that. You have to know where you're going, because otherwise your reader gets to the end and says, what? It has to make sense, and you've got to drop your clues. And so this one was really fun. It was fun for me to learn how to make plot even more important without losing the character-driven nature of the writing, which is what I love about books that I read. So it was challenging and fun and interesting. And for novel 4, I'm trying something totally different. I'm writing my grandmother's memoir, and I'm writing it as if I am my grandmother. She's dead, and I'm channeling her voice and writing a memoir and that's how that book that Jenny Jaeckel sent me that book, because it takes place from 1924 to 1930, this little chunk of her life. And so I'm learning memoir writing, so I love learning new things.
I think that's something that's wonderful about being an author is there's always something more to learn. There's more to learn about the topic or the setting that you're using. I do so much research, but it's also how do you put these things together? And it sounds like that's something you're doing and learning and enjoying along the way, which this wouldn't be worth it if you didn't enjoy it. But it is so rewarding. So
You're
rewarding.
right. If this wasn't enjoyable, it's so much work. And then putting yourself out there. I don't know if that
Oh,
was hard for you, but putting yourself out into the, first of all, in the beginning, just to try and get an agent, try to get a publisher, putting yourself out there and getting rejection letters and rejection letters. I did want to share one little quick story. So with the first novel, I worked so hard to find an agent first, and through networking, I landed an agent. And then she was to find me a publisher. And so she called me up and she invited me to lunch. And I thought, well, you wouldn't invite somebody to lunch to reject them, to tell them,
right.
yeah, so this must be good.
Mm-hmm.
So we go in and I sit down at lunch, and she says, I've really come to present an offer to you. I have an offer, and I want to share it with you. And so I took out my notebook, and I'm very professional, and she's telling me about the offer, and I'm taking careful notes and just so professional. And at the end, she shook my hand, and then we had a little hug, and I thanked her. And Mary Ellen, I hit the front door of that restaurant and I cried all the way to my car. I was so overcome, like, oh, this is really happening. She didn't see any of that, but and so then my husband had said to me, he said, now don't sign anything at lunch, bring it home. So I came home and I said, Bob, here's the offer. And I know you're going to pore over it and you're going to have suggestions and concerns, but I'm just telling you up front, I'm signing that sucker. Now, since then, I've learned that it's really good to look it over and have discussions with the publisher. But I was so joyful about a lifelong dream. A lifelong dream
Oh,
coming true.
that is, if I can interject a teeny little story of
Yes.
how mine first happened, is I got an email and the subject line said contract offer. Now, for some reason, I didn't see that subject line. And I always see the subject line. So I opened the email and it started off with, "We've read over your book," and I thought, oh, it's a rejection. I was so certain it was just another, "We're not interested." It was such a lovely book. They start out with something nice. "It's such a lovely book, but," and so
But
they said, "It's such a lovely book." And I'm like, oh, and then it said it was an offer. And I was just stunned. I was totally stunned.
yes, and you've written how many books now?
4. I have a 5th coming out in October. So there's 4 that are published and a 5th coming out. And I also have an unpublished book that is a loose memoir of my own. So
Hmm.
I don't know, maybe I'll have to resurrect that.
Yes, that's what I with book two. I have it's now called Reckonings, and I have resurrected it, and I'm rewriting it and getting it ready to send out into the world, and hopefully get an email with a little sign that says contract offering.
That's right. That's right. Uh,
Well,
I think you realize you've made it as an author when you get that 1-star review that you can laugh about. That's,
yes, yes,
rather than cry,
you're
laugh about it.
right.
Go, "Oh my goodness, that's so
You're
funny."
you're exactly right. You know that you've made it by then. Yes.
Yep.
Well,
Well, it has been so delightful to talk to you. Tell us again the date that your book comes out.
so Tangled Lies goes launches on July 22nd. And you can find me on Twitter, on Instagram, Carren E. Osborne, on my author page, Facebook author page, Carren E. Osborne author, and on YouTube. And you can find my wonderful interview with Mary Ellen Bramwell on the YouTube channel as well as the people I've mentioned, Jason Lady and Barbara Hallowik and Jenny Jaeckel and so many others. I hope you will go back and see some of these wonderful interviews. And I hope you will go out and buy Mary Ellen's book because you need to. You need to go read it. Thank you so much, Mary Ellen, for doing this. This was very fun. And thank you all for watching. And I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of What Are You Reading? What Are You Writing?